Okay, so we're going to talk today about communication, and I really want you to come out understanding um, what happens to us when we communicate. How can we get our message across better? I think we're in a world that needs to learn how to communicate again.
Yeah.
In all aspects of life, whether it's at work, whether it's with family, with friends, conflict management. Um, What's amazing is that in the last about 15 years, we've managed to scan the brain in 4D for the first time in history. And governments from all over the world have spent millions and millions of dollars on neuroscience, scanning the brain, what happens to our brain when we get stressed, what happens to our brain when someone tells us no, what happens to our brain when we disagree. And through that, we now understand neurologically what actually happens to us. And by knowing what to, and then we've started to find solutions, what to do and how to make sure that we can communicate better, especially when someone doesn't agree with us. Of course, it's really easy to communicate when everyone's drinking wine and it's all your friends and everybody's a bit happy. And in Hawaii, I think it's really easy because you're just like gorgeous place and everybody's chilled. But, we all have places in our lives, whether it's work, whether it's a certain person that we know or a certain family member, or even people that we have to live with sometimes, that we need to communicate better with. And it's good to know what's happening to us and how to do it better. And please, by the way, feel free to ask any questions. Okay. All right. So I'm going to talk first of all a little bit about our energy. And imagine, when you put your phone. Yeah, someone have a question now? When you put your phone in the charger at night and you go to sleep and you wake up in the morning and it's like 100% charged. So just imagine that you've had a really good night's sleep and you've charged yourself and you wake up in the morning and you're 100% charged. The rabbi's baby didn't wake him up, so he's had a good sleep. Nobody's had nightmares. Nobody's had any worries. You've all managed to get your 8 hours or 10 hours and you wake up, you're all refreshed 100%. And then 10 minutes after you wake up, you can't find your keys to your car. And you have to get soon. So your stress starts going up. And just like your battery on your phone, it starts going down. So imagine you're watching YouTube, it goes down quicker. Imagine you're downloading a very large file, the battery is going to go down quicker. And I don't know about your phone, but my phone, when it comes to 20%, what happens? It gives me a warning. You got to recharge. And what happens if I don't recharge? It comes to about 10% and it says, this is like serious now. If you don't recharge me, I'm going to die. And what happens if I don't recharge it? It dies. And that's what happens to our battery. So during the day, everything that happens to us, someone says something to us, we hear something on the news, we watch something, we read a blog, or we watch something that we disagree with, or somebody didn't say hello to us. We met someone we knew and he didn't say hello to us, or she wasn't as nice to us as we expected. Our battery is going down, 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 down. Now, what happens if we don't recharge our battery? We end up crashing. And usually this happens at about 6 p.m., at 7 p.m. If you haven't slept the night before, if things have been going not as you planned during the day. And at that point, it doesn't matter who that next person or the next thing is, that's when you're going to crash. Okay, so for a young father like Levi, it might be bedtime. And at that point, you might say things you don't want to say. Or for young people after work, it might be just their friend calling and complaining about something. And you'll say, you think you have what to complain about? And then we'll say everything that we don't normally say, right? So we always want to make sure that we don't get below like 30%. So that we don't really end up, that's when we say things we don't want to say and we regret them. And that's when we do things we don't normally do. We all have that threshold where we crash. So what we need to learn is how to recharge ourselves in little ways and in big ways so that we don't get to that. And that will obviously help with communication as well, although this is just like the start. Okay, so here's the battery and here it is going down. And if you don't recharge it, what drains? So we need to learn, first of all, what drains our energy. For every person, it's something else. I mean, I live in London, like a 12 step walk to the biggest kosher supermarket. And so, you know, I usually run in for eggs, and then I buy everything else and meet everyone and come back with everything but the eggs. And so when I run in, it's like I'll meet someone, and you know, just something about that energy of that person can drain me. Like I'll come back, I'll be like 10% less because that person just drained my energy. Or sometimes I'll just be running down the aisle and I'll meet someone and they'll give me a smile and we'll just have this little 1 minute chat about the weather, because what else do you talk about in London? And my energy will just be lifted, right? So we need to learn who and what drains our energy. Like for me, I can tell you it's definitely paperwork, drains my energy, hate it. One day when I'll be rich, I'll just get someone to do it for me. Hate paperwork, right? So that drains my energy. So then we can practice to pre-prepare ourselves. Like if paperwork drains my energy, what can I do before and after to lift that up? Or something more serious. If I go visit a friend on the cancer ward, that's going to drain my energy. What can I do to make like a bubble to protect myself that not all my energy is zapped? Or after that hospital visit, we want to be able to recharge. So right after that, I might do something like take a walk, just spend a bit of time with myself before I rush back into life, not jump back into the car, continue doing everything. And in the meantime, your energy level is so low that you're going to crash at some point. Okay, so there are external events that drain our energy, like missing the bus, the weather, not here, a chutzpah, you know, somebody being ignored, hearing bad news, certain people. Then there's internal triggers. That means my expectations, my interpretations. For example, I came a little late today. I apologize to you, but we went 2 hours away to the volcano by the time we came home, and we sorted the kids or whatever. So, but it's energy draining when you know you have to leave, and also when they know they're waiting, and is she coming and isn't she coming? So these are internal triggers because it's my expectations of myself, for example, to be on time. My interpretations, what will they think of me? Even if maybe they're not thinking that, what will they think of me, you know? And what I tell myself in that situation could also drain me, and what I believe, and what my sensitive buttons are, and everybody's sensitive buttons are different depending on their experience in life. So let's talk about what recharges our energy, and then we'll focus on communication because they are connected. So there's two strategies. I call it the outside in, using everything around me to help me calm down, okay? And the inside out, which is a step up, which is using everything inside of me to lift myself up, which is my thoughts, my feelings, and my physical sensations. So a little bit about the brain, just so you should understand what happens when you communicate. Oh, I should really give you this. Oh, you have it, okay. So, there you go. So in one of the things they found, okay, well, good. Because that's one of the things that raised my stress on
Yeah.
technology, right? Especially when it goes wrong. Okay, so a little bit about the brain. That we have the base of the brain, which is in the back, which is called the mammal brain, which really, if you scan it, and if you scan a donkey and you scan a sheep, we share it with all animals. I like to, in the Jewish world, in Chassidut, we would call it the animal soul. It's the animal, and we share it with the animal kingdom. And what that involves is, all we need to really know about it is that there's only one thing that's doing all the time, and that is survival. Okay, so when a baby's in utero, before a baby's born, the back of the brain, the mammal brain, is completely formed. It's ready for the baby when the baby's born. Because of course a baby has to survive. He's dependent on everyone. And therefore, as soon as a baby feels hungry, what will he do? He'll cry. His mammal brain is already ready to give him the cues what to do in order to survive. Because if he doesn't cry, he'll be ignored and won't be fed. Okay, and then we have what we call the human brain, which is the prefrontal cortex, which is right over here. And the prefrontal cortex, especially here, right in the front, it's where we get to make decisions. It's where we get to control our impulses. It's where we get to decide how to communicate. You know, it's like, I live in England, so, you know, if I would meet the Queen, it doesn't matter if my kids have just driven me crazy. It doesn't matter if I'm in the worst mood. I will automatically be able to use my prefrontal cortex to be on my polite behavior, right? We do that all the time. If you've ever seen like a mother of young children, she'll be on the phone and her children will be doing something and she'll be like this to her children while she's being really, yes, yes, of course, of course. As soon as the phone is down, the prefrontal cortex stops doing its work and she's right there disciplining her child. So this is our ability as human beings, as opposed to the rest of the animal kingdom, to actually have free choice, to choose our actions and to decide how we do and what we do. And we also over here decide what not to do. That's one of the hardest things. The rabbi spoke about this on Shabbat. He spoke about like not doing something. And the absence of doing something is often the hardest thing to catch a person, to thank a person for. For example, you're never going to thank your friend for not criticizing you when you told them that you did something that you know that they think might be wrong, right? You don't say, oh, thank you for not criticizing me, even though your friend may have thought, oh gosh, there he goes again. What's he think he's doing? But if the friend decided not to say to you, don't thank them for not doing something. We don't thank a child in class, oh, thank you for not talking today, even though for that child, it might have been the hardest thing to do, to control, you know, not to talk to their friend. So that's why it's the hardest thing for us, our internal dialogue. And when we choose not to do something, it's where our biggest battles of life actually exist. And yet it's the one that's hardest to catch people and to say, oh, thank you for not doing it. So maybe we have to learn to pat ourselves on the back and God knows our internal dialogue. So what's all this got to do with the prefrontal cortex? This is the part where we actually get to choose. And when we're born, when a child is born, he's got all the millions of billions actually of neurons that he needs for the rest of his life. And immediately as he's born, we're starting to connect the neurons, and these are called neural pathways. So for example, he sees his mother and she smiles and he's starting to learn, this is someone important. This is someone I recognize. When she smiles, I smile. And then that's how he learns language. He learns a word, he learns another word, and all these pathways are beginning to form. However, if anyone's ever seen a toddler or a teenager, in both stages of our lives, the brain is under construction. What that means is, this is why a toddler can do things like speech and can walk and can do a lot of things where his neural pathways are very strong. And yet in 1 second, he can flip, because it's like literally, if this is the base of your brain and this is your prefrontal cortex, if somebody says something to you like, no, don't touch that, then it flips and he starts to just go on the floor. And when we say the animal brain, he will go on the floor and he'll bang and he'll kick and he'll scream and he'll do things that you would expect an animal to really do. As a, you know, he'll bite even, you know, hurt people, fling his arms and legs around. And of course, we slowly train a child to use his prefrontal cortex. But what we need to understand on a neuroscience basis is that his brain is not yet ready. And do you know how long it takes for your brain to get ready, completely formed? About 21 to 25, yeah. So there you go. So you've got the, in America, the legal age is 21, right, for alcohol. So you got that one right. Okay, so what we know is that to regulate our senses and to regulate our triggers, especially with communication, there's a little, right inside in the deepest part of the brain, there's like an almond-shaped piece called the amygdala. And for years and years, doctors did not know what this was. And now they've discovered that the amygdala is like the traffic light. It's like the sensor that's constantly sensing the world. It's like, you know, when you sleep, you can't really hear, you can't really see, but there's that part of you that's sensing the space around you, so that you'll wake up if you hear a sudden noise, right? Or you'll wake up if something feels weird. Like I remember once waking up in the middle of the night, something didn't feel right, and I looked out the window and everything was pitch black, and I realized our power was, we had a power cut. You know, you don't realize how much noise the refrigerator and the freezer and the light in the hallway make until it's all off. So we have this sense that never sleeps. And that's really like the amygdala that's always sensing our space and making sure that we're safe. That's the only thing that it does. And the moment it feels that we're not safe, and this is the crucial part, it starts to shut the blood flow to our prefrontal cortex, which means literally we don't have blood flowing into our prefrontal cortex so that we're able to use our survival skills, which is fight or flight. So I'll give you an example. If imagine you're standing in the middle of a road and suddenly you see there's a truck coming towards you. You've got about 2.7 seconds to decide what to do, okay? On the right, there's a freezing cold river. On the left, there's huge prickly bushes. Where are you gonna jump? To the right or to the left? Now, the answer is, if you're gonna ask yourself that question, you're not gonna survive. If you're gonna say, what should I do? And you're gonna start using your brain, your prefrontal cortex, you're not gonna survive. In that moment, the amygdala is so important because what it does is it shuts our prefrontal cortex and it gives us that instinct to survive. So if you cannot swim, you'll probably jump to the prickles. And if you can swim, you may just jump into there. And then if afterwards somebody says to you, why did you jump there? You'll probably say, I don't know, I just did. It's like those stories we read on the news when somebody's in the bank, when someone walks in with a gun and they tackle the guy with a gun to the floor. And then afterwards someone said, what were you thinking? And they go, I wasn't. Because in that moment of real danger, we're not thinking. So of course, soldiers in war, now we can understand why PTSD exists, because they do this for years and they do this for such a length of time that they're in survival state as opposed to using the prefrontal cortex, that they forget how to calm their brain down again. And so the amygdala is very, very important in order to help us survive. However, the problem with the brain is that it's very smart, but it's also very simple. And when I say it's simple is that if someone says to us no, or if we're about to get a parking ticket on our car, or if we didn't get that job that we wanted, or if suddenly there's a virus called coronavirus and your future is uncertain. In all these cases, the brain reacts as if you're standing in front of the truck. So physical danger and psychological danger is viewed the same in the brain. So if somebody's shouting at me, especially if he's waving his finger at me, or you can see he's starting to get his fists out, my amygdala is immediately on high alert, immediately shuts down the blood flow to the prefrontal cortex, and immediately puts me in survival mode where I might do things, say things that I will regret afterwards. Because really, if someone's shouting at me, I'm not in real danger, at least most of the time we're not. If we get a parking ticket, our life is not in danger. I mean, yes, it's a pain in the neck and we think it's not fair and we think they're horrible and all that, but our life is not in danger. If we don't get the job we want, again, our life is not in danger. However, our brain interprets it in the same way. And this is what causes miscommunication, and it's also what causes a lot of stress in our lives. So, so on your sheets, you'll see that the cycle is that you feel anxiety, fear, or anger or frustration at either it's real, imagined, or it's just a temporary situation. Our body reacts immediately, because this is what the amygdala does when we're in survival, by raising our heartbeat, raising our blood pressure, and raising our temperature so that we're able to, here we go. So that we're able to fight back if we need to, or run away if we need to. And so as soon as our heart starts beating faster or our breath starts going shallower, our amygdala lights up and all the alarm bells ring and it shuts the blood flow to our prefrontal cortex. And at that point, all we can do is fight or flight or freeze. We don't have any other, we don't have any access to our wisdom. We don't have access to that book we read about communication. I say this as a parent, I read all the parenting books, but in that moment when my child's not listening to me, all the parenting books like flew out of my head and I couldn't remember what they told me to say. because if I'm too stressed and my heart is racing and my amygdala is already stopping the blood flow to my prefrontal cortex, I cannot physically remember what to say, which means I don't really have much choice in that moment. So, okay, we can go back to the, so that's about the amygdala. There you go. So the amygdala is like a bulldog. It's always guarding us. Whoops. Okay, mine also does this, and I know it's not only mine.
Yeah, I tricked.
Yeah, it's fine. Okay, so the amygdala is always guarding our safety. Our safety is always scanning, and the prefrontal cortex is more the thinking brain. It's where we plan, where we learn, where we decide, where we're able to reflect, reason, organize, respond, and be creative. And this is the important part, because anything creative is going to encourage our prefrontal cortex, and it's going to lower our stress response, and it's going to be able, we're going to be able to communicate better. We all, I'm sure we've all been in situations, I know I have, where the communication had to be creative. You had to find a creative way of getting along with this person who you have to work with, or sometimes you have to sit on a plane with for the next 11 hours. You know, you've got to be creative. How are you going to do this? Okay, the fight-flight response in quick. The fight is an explosive temporal outburst. It's not physically running away always. It's the inability to hear other people's point of view. It's aggressive, angry, rage, frustration, irritation. Flight is aside from running away, it's also panic and fear, anxiety, worry. You can't sit still, you're rushing around. And freeze, it usually only happens in real trauma, and it's numbness, helplessness, shame, hopelessness, trapped. And this happens to children who are consistently bullied. This happens to soldiers who are consistently in the battlefield. So we won't talk about that today. And the most important thing you need to understand is that it stops, all these three happens when our blood flow stops to the thinking brain. And this is the most important thing. We believe in Judaism that we all have the chirach of shit, we all have free choice. God gives us free choice, but in that moment, when we don't have access to where our free choice is, which is our godly soul, which is our thinking soul, then we have taken away our own free choice. And in that moment, we won't be at our best, and we definitely won't be godly. So the outside-in tools, let's start talking about them. So the first thing is breathing. Do I have one about breathing? Yeah. Okay. I actually was working with a child with anxiety, and I came up with a havdalah for breathing. Whoops, I'll go back. Okay, because breathing in Hebrew is neshima. That's how you say breath, which is very connected to the word neshama, which is soul. And I did this once with a child. I just did the havdalah, because havdalah is you smell the besamim. So when you breathe in through your nose. And when you breathe out, you want to flicker the flame. So if you put your hand on your stomach and you imagine there's a balloon in your stomach, so as you breathe in, what you want to do is you want to feel your stomach fill with breath. Okay, we start to the count of 3. Hold it to the count of 3, and then exhale to the count of 3, and we try to practice it to the count of 5. Okay, so we'll do it to the count of 3 today. So if you put your hand just gently on your stomach, by the way, if any of you have nieces, nephews, little cousins, sisters, children are amazing at learning this. This helps with pain, it helps with anxiety, it immediately lowers our blood pressure, which immediately tells our amygdala that we're safe, which immediately gives us access to our prefrontal cortex. So when we breathe in, so we breathe in through our nose, 1, 2, 3, hold it, 2, 3, and exhale, 2, 3. And it's just as important to exhale as to inhale. If you're very stressed, because I teach this all day, and still in London, the traffic is really bad, and sometimes I'm stuck in traffic and I'm late and whatever, and my brain starts racing, and I'm right away, the first thing I do is I exhale. And then you have to inhale, okay? So you can start with the exhale, you can start with the inhale, practice it. It's very discreet. Nobody knows you're doing it. You can do it while you're sitting in the car. You can do it while you're sitting on a train. In London, we do a lot of sitting on trains and buses. You can do it when you're standing in line in Costco and you're looking at your clock and you think you're late. Just breathe, okay? that breathing will remind you that you're not in real danger, that this will pass. You know, by tomorrow you will have forgotten this, because most of the things that stress us in life are forgotten an hour or two later. And it's a shame to stress ourselves and to lower our battery for something like being 5 minutes late, or I've forgotten to buy something, or whatever. Okay, so any questions, by the way, feel free to ask. Okay, the next thing we can do in the outside in tools is using our senses. I haven't, let me see if I have this. If I have it. Yeah, using our body and our physicality. Okay, I don't know if any of you have seen this. You can Google it, you can YouTube it. There's this fabulous lady who did a lot of research into this, and she discovered the victory pose. The victory pose is like this. You put your hands up in the air like a V, put your chin up, and that's the victory pose. And what's that got to do with communication and with stress? It's got to do with, again, getting our prefrontal cortex working. So the victory pose is very simple. If even blind people will do this when they've won. If you look at the Olympics, you look at any race, as soon as you've won, what do? We go, yes, right? It's called the victory pose. And even people who are blind, who've never seen anyone do it, which means it's a sense that we have, that we do. And what it does is really, if you look at it, it opens your body. Okay, so when you do the victory pose, you open your body. So when I sometimes, let's say, have to speak in front of a big crowd and I'm feeling a bit stressed and I'm not as prepared as I want to be, or whatever it is, you go to the bathroom when no one sees you, and for 2 minutes, 120 seconds, you do the victory pose. And when you do that, it just calms down your whole nervous system and your limbic system, and it just puts you in a better condition. It's basically a way of priming your brain for the best response and the best communication that you can have. So that's the victory pose. Easy to do, easy to learn. You can read all about the science behind it. I mean, if in very, very short, she looked at people who were interviewed for jobs, and most people sat there like this, really, really stressed, completely the opposite of the victory pose. Their bodies were closed. They were all stressed. And she took randomly people out and did the victory pose with them for 2 minutes, and they remembered what to say in the interview. They did much better. Okay, so actually when we're nervous, we tend to close our bodies. By opening our bodies, we're sending our brain a message that we are safe and we're okay, and we're priming ourselves for success. So smile. My children used to laugh at me. I used to give them a pencil to bite at, because when you bite on it, I don't have a pen on me, but when you bite on a pen or a pencil, what you do is you're simulating a smile. Even if you don't feel like smiling, if you smile, the muscles that you use when you smile, again, relax your brain. They lower your blood pressure, lower your heart rate, send your brain a message that you're fine, because we don't smile when we're not fine. Okay, so you can pretend smile or you can really smile. You can also shake it out with your, when you're feeling tense, you can literally shake it out. That also helps. So that's, again, using your body, using the space around you. Any cardiovascular activity, running, jumping, 20 jumping jacks, what it does is it mimics the stress response, because you're short of breath, your heart rate goes up, you sweat, but it's the mirror opposite, and it's really, really helpful. And of course, having vital vitamins and minerals. I think in Hawaii, you get plenty of vitamin D. And sleep is also a very important thing that helps us with being able to access our prefrontal cortex. And then there are the inside out tools. And these are a little bit more difficult. They're not more difficult, they take a little longer sometimes to learn, because what I like about the outside in tools is you can teach it. For example, if there's a toddler who's stressed in that moment, you could just say to them, put your hands up in the air, and they'll do this, and it'll be, then suddenly you'll just see how they slowly calm down, right? Or when I work with teenagers who have anxiety, so the first thing I teach them is to just open their bodies, okay? So when you open your body, you're sitting in class and it's very anxious, just open your body. Uncross your legs, put your feet on the ground, be grounded. Take a deep breath in, and immediately. It works quickly. It's a quick. It's something you can learn quickly, practice it, it works quickly. The inside out tools take a little bit more, a little more time, but they're just as important. So changing our expectations, making a lot of time for worry, some people suggest, changing the way we think, being reflective, and of course there's therapy. So this is the loop that we have in our brain. We think immediately, we feel, we act, and then we have the result, and it keeps going round and round. So I'll give you, usually the women get this, the men less, but I'll give you the example of a husband who forgets his wife's birthday. Okay, so she's sitting at home and she's going, he doesn't love me. If he would love me, he'd remember my birthday. And she's waiting. He comes back from work, she's waiting for him to say something, and she's giving him the silent treatment, right? This is what a lot of women do, at least the ones I work with in marriage counseling. So she's waiting, and guess what? He doesn't say. Not only that, he's thinking, she's in one of her moods. I think I'll just go down to the pub and be with my friends a bit, you know? So he comes in, grabs his thing, and he makes an excuse and leaves the house, which makes her think again, see, he doesn't love me, which makes her feel unloved, which makes her act the silent treatment. And one woman once said to me, you would get the silent treatment for 3 months for me. I'm like, okay, well, I guess some women would go this for 3 hours and some for 3 months. But eventually, when the cycles go around, he's thinking, I'm not sure what I did wrong. She's thinking he doesn't love me. And everyone is doing this thinking, feeling, acting, and getting the same result over and over again. Okay, and that's really the stress that we often have. So whether it's the boss, you know, a boss that I don't like, and we kind of expect him to behave a certain way or her to behave a certain way. So if I'm late to work and I'm thinking, oh, my boss is going to kill me, I'm already imagining my boss killing me and I'm already feeling anxious and I'm already acting nervous. And the result is that when I walk in, I'll be a blabbering mess before I've even walked in. And it's very possible that my boss has just had a really good day the day before and is totally oblivious. But because of my energy, when I walk in, I'll be noticed and then, oh, you're late. Okay, and I'll be like a mess before it even happens. So here we go. So these are the situations, like thoughts and images. What did I think or imagine at the time? This is how we have to learn these things retrospectively. What was I thinking or imagining? What went through our mind? What imagery came up? And then we each have to learn where in our body we feel our stress. For example, a lot of people feel it in their jaw, in their neck. Some people are stomach people. They immediately feel this like butterflies, or one person once said to me, elephants stomping in my stomach. Or the heart is another place we immediately feel it. Some people, they close their fists. Some people get a headache, especially people have migraines. Some people, if they have back injury, they might feel it in the back. So everybody has that weak spot, that 1 or 2 places where we feel the stress immediately. Learn where you feel it, because that will help you to release it. And then your emotions. What did I feel? How intense was the feeling from 1 to 10? And then the behaviors. What did I actually do? Or what did I avoid doing? That's a really good question. You know, how many of us procrastinate because of what we think and what we feel and what our body feels? And what's my automatic response? That means if I was a fly in the wall, what's my automatic response? Some of us are fight people. Some of us immediately fight with life and we fight back. Some of us kind of tend to want to just withdraw and pretend it's not happening. Learn what type of person you are. And all these are connected almost immediately. And in order to learn ourselves and be reflective and use our prefrontal cortex, we can do this retrospectively with anything that happens to you in life, okay? And here are the words I should look out for. So words have a very powerful effect on the way we feel. I should have, I would have. It's called shoulding yourself. I should have, I would have, I could have, if only. Okay, I'm supposed to. And there are 4 words here that I never let my children say. Never, always, everybody, nobody. Nobody else's mother says no. Everybody else's mother lets them. Everybody has a phone besides me, right? Nobody has this old phone, only me. And they know already, I just always say to them, okay, when you can restructure that sentence, come back and say it without the never always, because that's really, when we find ourselves thinking always, everybody else is managing, nobody else has my problems, I'm always the last one, I'm never the first one, whichever way we think about it, we're making everything black and white. Just by changing the sentences and softening them, it helps us in our responses. So I'm just going to conclude over here and ask, if anyone has questions, please feel free. Flexible thinking really shows higher resilience. So we communicate better when we're flexible in our thinking. Emotional health and mental health are people who have a high emotional and mental health are flexible thinkers. They're able to understand that the way I think is not the way everyone else thinks. The way I feel is not the way everyone else feels. It's a little bit like, imagine when a baby is born, he's born with like a pair of goggles in yellow, okay? And it's really comfortable, he doesn't realize they're on. And everything they see in the world, they see with a hue of yellow. And then one day, when they're older, the glasses just fall off and they're like, hey, the world is not yellow. And that's exactly how flexible thinking works. We grow up and we all see a hue of color. Some of us see blue and some of us see the world in green and some of us see it in yellow. And then one day, hopefully when we mature and we start to be reflective, we realize, oh, not everyone sees the world in that color. My glasses just fell off. There are other ways of seeing the world. So being flexible in the way we think and the way we expect things will just help us in our life and make us emotionally and mentally healthier. So these are easy ways you can do this. Alter your routine. You know how I have certain friends. I have a certain friend, when I go to Starbucks with her, her Starbucks order, her coffee is so long, it takes her like a minute to say. I always say amen after she says it. Like amen, it sounds like a bracha, you know. It's like, I wanted this or that, with this, with that, with skim, with that. Like, I just take a cup of hot water, that's me, I'm really easy. So so just alter your routine. Like, don't go to Starbucks, you know, just go to that little coffee house in the corner, you know, don't get off at the same bus stop, get off at the bus stop before. Don't take the elevator, take the steps. Don't take the same route, try a different route. Don't always go to the same park, try somewhere else. Don't go to the same side of the island, try the different side of the island, you know. We become creatures of habit and that makes us rigid. When we do something, it doesn't have to be every day, but if every once in a while we challenge ourselves to just do something just a little bit different than our daily routine, it just makes our brain it shakes us up a little bit and it alters us and it makes us more flexible. Engage in creativity. Anything that's creative, I say it's God's way of blessing us that we're able to be creative, because really God could have created the world without creativity. But the fact that human beings have been able to build the most incredible buildings, to draw the most incredible art, to play the most amazing music, all these things, anything that's creative, whether that's using your hands or using your creativity, it could be knitting, it could be sewing, it could be anything really, cooking for some people, baking for some people. Everyone should find their place of creativity, whether you do it or whether you go to the art galleries and just enjoy it. It's an amazing tool that we've been blessed with. Seeking to meet new people, you know, by meeting new people and expanding our circle of people, it just broadens our mind and allows us to hear other people's experiences, you know, so not always having everyone your own age group. I hang around with people 20 years older than me, 20 years younger than me. It's a good thing. You hear what's going on in the world. Notice your thinking patterns that we already spoke about. And rigid thinking makes life much harder and reduces our ability to connect to others. So when we think things have to be so, it must be this way, this is the only way, it really limits us and it limits our own experience of life. Not only does it make other people not want to hang out with us, but it also makes our own ability to really live life to the fullest. I don't know why I don't have nature here. I should. Okay. So you know what, we'll do just this one just to show you how important words are. Okay, so when I say the word love, what are the first three things that come into your mind? It could be words. Should we unmute? It could be words. It could be images. It could be colors, whatever you want. When you say the word love, what are the first three things? If someone's just had a heartbreak, it's not going to be good. Okay, anyone? You're unmuted. When I say the word love, what are the first three things that you associate with the word love? Family, very good.
Caring for someone.
Caring for someone.
Mother,
Mother.
husband, friends.
Good. Any imagery?
Smiles.
Smiles, good. Any feelings?
Happiness.
Happiness, warm. People say light. Yeah, I'll give you some of the answers I've gotten. People say a heart, flowers, family, like a sunshine, warmth, light, hug, joy, dancing. Whoops, 1 second. That's the next one. Okay, so love, the association to do with love is usually positive, unless you've just had a heartbreak. Once I had somebody say heartbreak, disappointment. Okay, right. But for most people, love, they think family, warmth, light, flowers, chocolates, whatever. Good feelings, happiness, giving, joy. Now, what do most of you think when I say the word diet? What are the first three words or association with the word diet? Nutrition. Yeah.
Foods that aren't tasty.
Foods that aren't tasty. There we go. Restrictions is a big one. Yeah, a lot of people say restrictions. Anyone else on Zoom?
Appearance. Like the benefits. And it's not so bad. There's good food to eat on a diet.
Very good. I like the positivity. So some people say lettuce and some people will say chocolate, depending on which side of the diet you're on. Some people say failure and restriction, hunger, calories, punishment, skinny friend. How come she can eat everything and I can't? Whoops. Okay, so why I'm trying to say this to you is because everything, I give courses on the mindset to lose weight. And I personally have lost 3 sizes using this. So the mindset of the diet is really, really important, because what we associate, the moment you say, for example, love, everyone goes, oh, light, warm, heart, chocolate, family, friends, And the moment you say diet, I go like hunger, restriction, I'm hungry, I'm failing. And it's really like this. If you imagine that I say to you, in central London, you have some of the biggest advertisement companies in the world, and I'm giving you $2 million, and you can go to the best company and you can bring your shampoo to the market, okay? They will literally do what I just did with you. They will say to you, what is the 3 first words, and they'll usually bring it down to 2, that people will think of when they think of your shampoo. Because really, when I'm standing in the supermarket and there's 100 different shampoos in front of me, they all do the same thing, meaning they'll all get my hair clean. Every single one of them, if I use it, my hair will be clean. Why do I choose that one out of the 100? And my friend will choose that one out of the 100. And my daughter will choose the different one, because it's all in the marketing. Okay, so they'll use words like youthful, silky soft, highlights, they'll use exactly. So let's say that morning I woke up and I looked in the mirror and I thought, oh, I'm looking old. And then I find something that's anti-aging. I'll be like, oh, that's the one I'm taking today, right? So it's really all in the marketing. And everything in our life is about marketing. Meaning, if you think of a certain person, you'll have 3 immediate feelings and associations about that person. So for example, if you have a colleague at work, or a boss, or you have a neighbor who lives next door to you, and the first 3 things you think about your neighbor is they're noisy, they're dirty, and they're inconsiderate, okay? then every single time you think about the neighbor, which means every time you come home practically, because you'll see the door, that's what will happen. And it will make you each time feel like, okay? So what you can do is you can just change the marketing to yourself, because that's all marketing is. It's changing the words and the associations that you immediately have with something. And when you change it to, they're different, they do things differently, you know, they have their own customs. We can just, you know, we can live and let live. And that's what you tell yourself. Then each time you'll sit and you repeat it over and over again, then that will become your associations. You can literally lower your stress level just by marketing things differently to yourself. And it's like that with everything in life. I say it's like that with religion as well. If I say to you, what does Judaism mean to you? So some people say, oh, it means restrictive, and it means I'm not allowed to do a lot of things, and it means it's old-fashioned. And if that's what Judaism means to you, it doesn't matter, even if you have the most fabulous rabbi, which you do, and Rebbitzin, which you do, it's not going to help, because each time the association will be negative. But if Judaism means to you that it's tradition, it's family, it's God's wisdom, it's you know, it's my identity, it's who I am, then even if you have unlucky enough not to have such a good rabbi, you'll still want to be engaged with it. And it's like that with everything important in life, with the people that we have, with the things that we choose to do, with our jobs, with everything that we choose to do, the way we communicate that to ourselves is the most important part. What actually that person or that situation is already outside of ourselves. We cannot control it, but we can control how we communicate it to ourselves. And this is a really simple way of doing things. And I've done this with so many people, and it's just such a simple thing to do. But when you sit down with yourself and you say, okay, this is what I think, for example, with diet, I think I'm always hungry, I'm always failing, I'm on and off it. It's very restrictive. So now, instead of thinking that, what you want to do is with marketing, what you want to do is you want to say, it's not about the actual diet. It's what will, like somebody here said something like, it's not so bad, there's some good food, right? So what we do is we say, what do I want to achieve once I've reached my goal? What will that diet mean to me? So for example, with one of my clients, it meant she'll feel confident enough to ask for a promotion at work. She didn't feel confident enough to ask for promotion at work. So for her now, diet meant more money, more success, more confidence. Okay, so now that's a whole different marketing. So now when I have that chocolate in front of me and I'm saying, actually, that chocolate is not going to give me the success, the money, and the confidence, it's easier for me to just say no, thank you. Because it's no longer about the chocolate or about what I'm not allowed to have. It's about what I'm going to get. And therefore, it's a really simple and effective way of changing all habits and communicating. And communication, by the way, the most important part of communication is how we communicate things to ourselves, our inner communication. After that, once we communicate to ourselves in a more positive way, then of course we'll communicate to others more positively, automatically. Okay, so any questions? The floor is open. No, you've all been very good students. Right. We didn't get, of course, to half what I wanted to say, but this is me. Yeah? Are you ready for more, or? Okay, so one of the things that I also do is EFT. It's tapping. To this, okay. Yeah, thanks. So we spoke about breathing and smiling, but EFT is tapping. It's very big. It's emotional freedom technique. It's based on Chinese medicine, on the acupuncture points, but instead of using needles, you can tap yourself. So for example, most people, when they're, scared, the first thing they do, they go, and these points are one of the points that we tap when we're to help with fear. So, I'm just going to teach you really. There's this point, which is a really, really good point to know. Okay, And really what you can do is just talk to yourself while you do it. So you go, even though I'm feeling this stress and this anxiety and I'm late and I don't know what's going to be and I don't know how I'm going to pay my rent next month or whatever it is, I'm just still going to accept it for what it is right now. Okay, and what this does is it really just begins to kind of, if you want to, you can massage it, which makes it even stronger. And it's a bit of a sore point over here. It's just under your collarbone bone. And what it does is it just begins to kind of drain your limbic system and your nervous system. And it just, you know, helps, again, using your physical body to help yourself. So EFT is very big, but I'm just going to, there's a great app, actually, it's called the Tapping Solution. Fabulous. A lot of it costs money, but there are some free ones there, and that's a really good beginning place. And it's better. So people say to me, so what should I do if I'm cracking up and my battery's dead, you know, and I can't communicate? I say it's always better, even in anger, to say, I cannot deal with this right now. I'm just going to go and take a break. You know, it's better to do that and just go and take a break. If you have 1 minute, just do some breathing. If you have 2 minutes, do breathing with a victory pose. If you have 3 minutes, maybe do 20 jumping jacks as well. Anything that you can do to just lower that so that when you come back into the room, you'll be much more able to deal with it in a rational way. Using neutral language is also a good thing. So this is used a lot in management. So for example, if the manager comes in and says, right, if we don't reach our target, we're not getting our bonuses. What happens is immediately it pits person against person, because how come she's going home early and she's not helping the team? How come he comes late and he doesn't help the team? And you know, why should I not get my bonus because he can't be bothered doing this, you know? And it pits everybody against each other. So now in the modern age, when we talk to managers about how to talk to others, we say to them, say the same thing, but in a positive way. That means, guys, when we reach our goal, then we'll get our bonuses. When then, instead of if, then no, is a whole different way. You're saying exactly the same thing, you're just communicating it in a positive way, and people can hear it better. They hear, oh, when we reach our goal, then we'll get our bonus. And that's a motivating thing. That makes people collaborate and work together. Oh, you can't work late today, I'll work late today, but then can you come early tomorrow? And suddenly it becomes a collaborative place instead of a dog fight dog kind of environment. Resist giving more information. So when you see that somebody in front of you has reached that point, just don't try argue back with them, okay? It's like a waste of time. You know, I know we make a joke about the cocktail, you know, you talk to the wall, but literally it's like talking to the wall. You're talking to the wall. So if a child is tantruming, for example, or a teenager is having one of these fits, or somebody at work who's still acting like a teen is yelling, it's just a waste of your energy to engage with that. It's better to say less, okay? Because what happens is our intuition is to give more information. You start saying, but no, you've got to do this, you've got to do that, and you're not listening to me. And you have to understand that person doesn't have access to the prefrontal cortex, so they cannot listen to you. Okay, so it's just like a waste of time. Don't give more information. If you're in a place of authority, then just kind of state what needs to be done and walk away. Don't try explaining, excusing, you know, going to a whole conversation, because that person is beyond conversation. You're just wasting your time. So we spoke about instead of if you don't do X and you won't get Y, instead of
Can you go on instead of I need you to? The one above.
And I lower the, yes. So I need you. So really it's like, I need you to is again, a more neutral thing. It's like, it's time to, it's not me, it's time to. People hate being told what to do. Some people even more, some people have a very big trigger by being told what to do, including children. And therefore it's better to, instead of saying you must do this, say it's time to go to bed, okay? It's time to tidy up. It's time to stop the coffee break, you know? So it's, again, it's not me telling you, It's a more neutral thing. It's the time. It's just what needs to be done. So it sounds more matter of fact. So the most important thing is to acquire more emotional language when we're talking to people. So you want to the other page, the other side, yeah.
The other side of
This page, yeah. Yeah. Did you put it on?
Yeah.
Okay, so here we go. So you acquire emotional language. That means that instead of talking about what's happening, you talk about the emotions underneath what's happening. It takes a little bit of practice, but it really is basic counseling skills. I mean, when you come to a counselor or to a therapist and they say to you, so tell me how you're feeling, and you're like, and then they go, tell me more. And how did you feel when that happened? And what did you think when he said that? That will be $200, please. You know, what did the therapist actually do? What did the counselor actually do? They listened and they reflected. And really, I would love for children to learn this in school, you know, because the listening skills are so vital to communication, because we often think that communication is about what we say, but it's a lot less about what we say than about what we hear and what we listen. And when we go to someone and they listen to us, we feel like they communicated with us. And you know, I mean, a therapist is the perfect example. A therapist says very little. Right. Wow. Really? That's all the therapist does, a whole hour, what they're doing, why they're spending money, but they're listening to you. Their phone is off. They're making eye contact. They're watching your body language. They're noticing what you say, and they're helping you reflect. And so when we try to communicate with someone, it's a lot less about what you say. It's a lot more about what you hear and what you observe. And when you say to the person what you're observing, for example, you're doing the sounds like, you can't do this forever, by the way, you've got to mix these things. You can also mirror the words exactly back to you. I mean, part of my training years ago, I don't do it anymore. I worked for a suicidal line, with people who were suicidal call. And this is exactly the skills we were taught, by the way. Weren't taught anything different. Okay. So we literally sat there going, so tell me about it. So how did they make you feel? Do you want to take your own life? And sometimes they'd be like, no. And they'd be like, yes. So tell me how you want to do it and why you want to do it, you know. And we just talk about it. And you could hear literally within a 20-minute call, they called up, they were sounding panicky, they could barely talk. 20 minutes later, they're sounding relaxed. Now, of course, we don't know what's going to happen to them because it's all anonymous, but we hope that we'll keep them going till the next day, which we did have regular callers called every day. But the idea is that all we're doing really is listening. We're not giving advice. We're not telling them you shouldn't. Everything they feel is valid to them in that moment. And what we do is we mirror back the words exactly as they say it. That means without any irony. So if somebody says something shocking, like I remember the first few weeks where I worked there, some people say, I just want to kill myself. It's quite shocking to hear someone say that, and it's a huge responsibility. So you just reflect that word back to them. Oh, you want to kill yourself? And then they go, yes, because when you reflect the words exactly back to them, then they are able to explain those words back to you. It's a bit like when the first time my daughter said to me, I hate you, mommy. She might as well have taken a dagger and put it in my heart, you know? So I just went, oh, you hate mommy? And then she goes, I hate you because you didn't want to give me this and that and the other, right? So then it became like, when a person says something, especially a child or especially an adult in distress, they don't hear themselves. They don't hear what they sound like. So when you tell them the words exactly back to them, they're actually hearing themselves. And then they need to explain what they've just heard. Because we don't hear ourselves. Other people hear us, but we don't hear ourselves. Also reflecting the emotion back to them, not just the words. That means if they start saying, my mother, my father, my brother, my boss, I lost my job, I just found out I had cancer, whatever it is that they're telling you, these big, big things, instead of going into the details of that, you can say, so how did that make you feel? Tell me about how you're feeling. And that, of course, is much more powerful than just, also what kind of cancer? Like, they can tell that to anybody on the street. But when you're having a real communicative experience with someone, you want to get to underneath that. What is it that you're scared of? What's your biggest fear? What do you tell me about it? You know, and that allows them, gives them permission to say things they may not be able to say, even to their best friends or even to their family. Another one is to deliver empathy and then state the rules. So again, if you have to get someone to do something, if you're in a place of, you know, you're the adult or you're the boss or you're the neighbor who needs to tell their neighbor to move their bins or whatever, just say, I know how hard it must be for you to remember that every Tuesday the collection is. However, I'd like to remind you that Tuesdays is the day that your bins need to be out or whatever it is, you know? So if you do first the empathy, like you say, oh, it must be really hard for you. For example, a teenager who's sitting there on the phone and they're not getting out and they, you know, you've asked them 3 times already to, I don't know, do their homework or whatever. So instead of saying, do your homework, do your homework, do it. I know how hard it must be for you to tell yourself to just turn off that phone, but it's time to turn off the phone and do the homework. So just the fact that someone hears that it's hard for you sometimes is not always, but sometimes works. Because one of our biggest needs as human beings is to be understood. And so if somebody talks to us in a way that they understand our struggle and they don't just say, oh, you're so lazy, why can't you do this? That's not going to encourage us. But if someone comes down to our level and says to us, oh, it must be really challenging for you to do this. I know how hard it must be for you. However, this must be done by tomorrow, you know, then we're opening up the idea that I know, I hear you. However, these are the rules. So if you want to make borders for people, that's an easier way of doing it. And also, or you can do delivery empathy and ask, what are you going to do? So this I do a lot with some of my children who like to talk a lot and call me up. Oh, my teacher, my this, my that, she hates me, every time I walk into it, I listen, and they say, what are you going to do about it? I hear how hard this must be for you, and it's really challenging. And what are you going to do about it? So really, that's quite empowering. It's not, everything does depend on your tone of voice, and everything does depend on you being very real with them in that moment and present with them. It's not going to work if you're looking at the phone and talking to them. It's not going to work if you're like kind of looking at your watch and looking to go away, but giving them that real focused attention and asking them, what are you going to do? And if they say, I don't know, you can always say, look, I have, you know, why don't you go and think about it and come back with some ideas? Whatever a person comes up with on their own, even if you have 100 ideas for them, if they come up with an idea on their own, it's going to be much more empowering and they're going to more likely do it than if you tell them to. And another way is to empathize and give them their wishes and fantasy. It sounds a little, yeah, I wish I could give you a raise, you know, I wish I could buy you whatever it is that you want. And wouldn't that be nice? And wouldn't that be fun? However, at this moment in time, that's not the reality, you know. So again, it's playful, it's a little bit of fun, a little bit of a sense of humor. Not everything in life has to be so serious. And it also just encourages a person to, you know, you're basically what you're saying to them when you're telling them that you're giving them the wishes and fantasy is that you're understanding their need. However, you're unable to fulfill it at this moment. So I understand that this is what you need, but I'm unable to fulfill it at this moment. I used to do this a lot in the car with my children. I used to drive a lot in the car with my kids. Be like, oh, mommy, it takes so long. And be like, oh, I wish we could just have imagine we had wings on the car and we could just, you know, push them out and we could fly over this traffic and wouldn't that be wonderful? And then they would join in this fantasy and we would do this fantasy for about 5 minutes. And then hopefully they relaxed a little for the next half hour. Okay, another really important thing that I'm going to say is that when you apologize to someone, so often when people apologize, they'll say, I'm really sorry I said that, but you have to understand. And the moment the person hears but, they don't feel that you're sincere with your apology. So I'm really sorry I said that, and I'll really do my best to not do that again. Okay, that's much more powerful than the but. So often I hear people apologize. Teachers to students, parents to children, children to parents, neighbors to neighbors, friends to friends. And their apology is amazing until they say, but you have to understand that you triggered me, but I was very tired. The moment you do that, you weaken the entire apology because the person hears the excuse of why you did what you did to them, and they no longer hear what you've said before. So it's important to just think in your mind how you can say the apology with the word and I'll really endeavor to not do that again. And I hope to make it up to you in the future. It's just so much more powerful. It's one word and it changes the entire communication. When it comes to praise, the most important thing to know about praise, and there's a Dr. Carol Dweck, she writes a book, not that easy to read, but it's all her research on praise. And her bottom line is that not to evaluate the praise. For example, when somebody, let's say your friend, I don't know, picked up the shopping for you and you say, oh, you're so amazing. I don't know what I'd do without you. It's a little bit sometimes embarrassing. What's even better with praise is to say, wow, I know how busy you are, and yet you found the time to go to the store, to stand online, to get me exactly what I wanted. You even called me to make sure that was and then you came and delivered it to me. That's what I call a good friend. Can you imagine? That's like gold dust. That makes a person feel, when you do this to people, you can literally see them grow 2 inches in front of you. You know, when you do this to children, when I teach husbands to do this to wives and wives to do this to husbands, and it just enhances every single relationship when you learn how to praise properly. Because when you praise in that way, you're acknowledging their challenges in doing that. To just say you're amazing, okay, but their challenge in doing it. What did they have to overcome in order to do this for you? So this comes from Barbara Colasso in her book. I forgot what her book is called. I'll remember in a minute. Stroke the deed, be specific to the deed, and state the importance of the deed. I think it's how to, what's it called? The skin knee. How to, forgot the name. Okay. So by doing all this, what you're doing is you're communicating differently to yourself, which automatically makes you communicate differently to others. You're listening more than you're talking. We always are gravitated towards people who are more introverted and listen more, especially when we have something really on our minds and on our hearts, because we know that they're not going to just give us advice. Even though people say, just tell me what to do, we don't actually want to be told what to do. We want to be empowered to do things for ourselves. And then a few little tips on how to communicate and to remember all this in the context of what happens to our brain when we're stressed, so that we're in the prime position to communicate. So we're always looking after our mental health and making sure that our battery is up so that we're more able to give and really have the patience to do everything we learn. Otherwise, we can learn all the rules, but if your battery is on 10%, you're not going to be able to do it. So I hope that was helpful. And yeah, sure.
Kind of in the rule series section.
Yeah.
There's kind of like, it's really hard to do, so I'm asking what kinds of things. Right. How not to respond to those attention grabbing statements, like you're saying, they're like, hey, mommy, and it's like an attention grabbing statement. Exactly. And they're really trying to, whatever techniques that we can do to not, like, because our response is kind of like a marketing is like, ooh, so the air. You know, anxiety, I want that, but we don't look at the price, so we look at and emotionally that we do that too. And while I told that, and it makes sense, it's really hard to do that.
All these things are not easy. So I would say in the first place, when I'm shocked, very little shocks me at my age, not very too much, but once in a while I get shocked by what someone says, especially when I'm in session with them. So I literally just say their words back to them, because that immediately puts the onus on them. It's like someone threw you a ball and you're throwing the ball back. Whoever holds the ball keeps it and has to do something with it. But when you throw the ball back at someone, then often people don't hear themselves, and then they have to excuse what they say. But the second thing is what you tell yourself. And that is, I can say to myself, oh, he's really angry at this moment in time. Okay, something must have happened in his day. It's nothing to do with me. Because most things, the best sentence I ever learned was, it's not about me. It's not. people will let it out on you because their battery is low right now, but it's really not about you. It's about everything that preceded you. So, so a great sentence to keep in your mind is, it's not about me. It feels like it is, but it isn't, because it isn't. Most people don't wake up in the morning and say, how can I hurt someone today? But they do. And another good sentence is that hurt people hurt people. So only people who are hurt intentionally hurt others. And generally, when we're hurting, we tend to hurt someone else unintentionally. Okay, when we're happy, we tend to make someone else happy. I mean, if you've ever been, imagine you just won the lottery, you're not going to hurt anyone in that moment. You're so happy, you'll just be, someone says that same sentence to you in that moment, it'll be like, who cares, right? I say this about, once it happened to me that I was on the phone and one of my children ran where they weren't supposed to run, and they knocked something over and it smashed on the floor. Oh, look where you're running, right? And then I thought to myself, imagine in that moment, that phone call was, you just won the lottery. I would be like, oh, mazel tov, you know, it broke on the floor, let's clean up the glass, let's go buy another one. So it's the same child, same mother, but just the mother was in a different place in that moment in time.
Sounds like you're saying, quote, hurt people hurt others,
right.
And also hurt people get hurt by others.
Get hurt by others, yes, with more sense of true, 100%. Look, some people have been through really, really tough experiences in life, and in those times, they are very sensitive, and they just will be sensitive. And sometimes we hurt people unintentionally, and most times I would say we hurt people unintentionally. We have to understand that most people hurt us unintentionally as well. They're not intentional about it, but they just do. But it hurts us because it's our trigger, and therefore we need to learn our own triggers. When we learn our own triggers, we understand it's not about them, it's about me. That particular sentence hurts me. For example, if a person's a people pleaser and someone says, I hate you, it's going to be much harder for that person. But if a person's a more egoistical, doesn't care about pleasing people, you can hate me, but you're going to do what I tell you to do. So it's like the same sentence to different people means different things. It just depends. And it depends who that person is and when in our life it was said. And, but we can really learn to navigate our own emotions so that they don't. But some people, if they do suck the energy out of us, if it's a constant person, then it's more challenging. We need to learn to kind of wrap ourselves around in this protective bubble when we're around them so that they don't, because they know where to push, they know where they can push the buttons. And we need to kind of protect those buttons a little bit when we're around them. And we need to learn how to recharge ourselves afterward. And it's our own challenge in life. God sends us, every person in life is sent to strengthen us a little. I mean, if everyone was exactly the same as us and fought like us and knew how we were feeling all the time, then where would we grow? Where would we, where would our challenges be in order to grow? Challenges are for us to grow, including all the people we meet that may challenge us. They're there for us to grow. It doesn't matter about them. I have to grow. I have to learn to be better. And from some people we learn what to do, and some people we learn what not to do. Yeah. Okay, any more questions? Or I don't see the faces. So, yeah. Okay, so good night, everyone. Shaloha, as they say.
Aloha, good night. Very good. Very, very good.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good night. Laila Tov.
Laila Tov, good night. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Good. So, you guys live here?